Welcome, everyone. This is an explainer for Professor Freeman's fire prevention class here at Santa Ana College. Today, we're going to dive deep into the U.S. fire problem, and I mean really deep. We're going to look way beyond just the flames to understand the complex and often hidden systems that are at play.
Just let this sink in for a moment. This quote comes from the National Fire Protection Association way back in 1958. They said it after the devastating Our Lady of the Angels school fire in Chicago, a fire that killed 92 children and 3 nuns. It's a haunting statement, and it perfectly sets the stage for our discussion today, because it begs the question, 60 years later, why do these same tragedies keep happening?
You know, to really get the fire problem, you first have to understand the human cost. So let's start with a single family story. Back in 2014, Shemaya Coleman was on top of the world. After living with relatives for years, she and her 4 kids finally had a place to call their own. But then, one night, that dream became an absolute nightmare. A fire broke out in a vacant apartment just 1 floor below them. And here's the thing. There were no working smoke alarms to give them any warning. The family was trapped. Blocked by thick smoke and intense flames, Shemaya had to make an impossible choice. From a top-floor window, screaming for help right before she jumped. She survived the fall, but with broken arms and legs. Her kids, they didn't make it. Carlisa, who wanted to be a lawyer, Carl Vaughn, who was such a hard worker, Shamarian, the family clown, and little Ariana, who told everyone she wanted to be bigger than Beyoncé. They were all gone. And here's the part that should make you angry. This was completely preventable. The city knew for years that this building was a death trap. And this wasn't just some tragic one-off event. An investigation found that between 2014 and 2019, at least 61 people died in buildings across Chicago where city officials had already been warned about serious fire safety problems, but they just failed to act in time. So this forces us to ask a really crucial question, one that every single fire professional has to grapple with. What were the systemic failures that allowed this to keep happening? Was this just a string of bad luck? Or was it a symptom of something much deeper, a system that's fundamentally broken? Okay, so let's dig into this because this is a huge piece of the puzzle. A core issue is the city's entire strategy for enforcement. Chicago uses what's called a reactive system. That means they basically wait around for tenants to call 311 and report a problem. Now compare that to a city like Minneapolis, which has a proactive model. They don't wait for a tragedy, they routinely inspect all rental units. They target buildings with a history of problems, and they use real consequences, like revoking a landlord's license, to force them to fix things. And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. In Minneapolis, more than 85% of critical safety issues actually get fixed. And here's where you see the real-world impact of that reactive approach. The data is, well, it's staggering. You can see that serious safety violations are almost 5 times more common in communities that are predominantly non-white compared to those in mostly white neighborhoods. So this isn't just about faulty wiring or missing smoke detectors. It's about a system whose failures hit communities of color the hardest. And that brings us to a really key point from housing experts like Alan Malik. He says, look, this isn't rocket science. These are not impossible problems to solve. The solutions are out there. It all comes down to a matter of political will and priorities. So, as professionals, how do we even begin to make sense of all these different pieces? Well, the National Fire Protection Association gives us a really powerful tool for that. It's called the Fire and Life Safety Ecosystem. The basic idea is that safety isn't just one thing. It's like a chain made of 8 different links, and all of them have to work together. If even one link breaks, the whole system can fail.
Let's break down the first half of that ecosystem, the system components. It all starts with the government actually accepting its responsibility for public safety. Then, you need up-to-date codes and clear standards. And, maybe most importantly, you need a system that rigorously enforces compliance with those codes.
Now, the other half is all about the human components. You need a community that's actually willing to invest in safety. You have to have a skilled workforce that knows how to build and maintain safe buildings. You need emergency responders who are prepared and effective. And finally, you have to have an informed public that actually understands the risks they face and knows their rights. So when we take this framework and apply it back to that fire in Chicago, you see a clear, catastrophic breakdown. 2 of those links just shattered. There was a failure in government responsibility, the city had been warned, And there was a failure in code compliance. The codes were on the books, but they weren't enforced. That chain reaction, that breakdown, led directly to the deaths of Shemaya's 4 kids. And I want to be clear, this is not just a Chicago problem. We see this pattern of failure all across the country. In 2018, the Camp Fire in California exposed a tragic failure in preparedness. Officials simply had not planned for a wildfire that could move with that kind of modern speed and intensity. And as a result, the community's most vulnerable people, the elderly, those with mobility issues, they paid the ultimate price.
If you go back a few decades to the Bronx in the 1970s, the fire problem there was directly fueled by social and political decisions. Policies like redlining and so-called urban renewal basically created the perfect storm, concentrating poverty and letting housing fall into disrepair. It created an epidemic of fires that absolutely devastated entire communities.
Or think about the aftermath of 9/11. We saw political and economic pressure completely override scientific advice. The White House Council on Environmental Quality, which was being led by someone who wasn't even a scientist, pressured the EPA to lie to the public, to tell them the air was safe to breathe, all so they could get Wall Street back up and running. That one decision created a massive long-term public health crisis for first responders and for residents. So this brings us to what I believe is your challenge as future fire professionals. The fire problem is like an iceberg. The part everyone sees, the fires on the evening news, the official statistics, that's just the very tip sticking out of the water. And here's why this all matters. Your true work, your most important work, lies below the surface. Your job is to understand that huge, invisible system of things like poorly maintained buildings, gaps in policy, and the social and economic issues that ultimately determine who lives and who dies in a fire. So we're going to end with this question. This is the question that should guide everything you do in this course, and more importantly, everything you do in your career. It's not enough to just see the fire. You have to understand why it happened. So how are you going to learn to see below the surface?